June 27th. This is the Transportation Committee meeting for June 27th, 2023. Present are council members Fred Chang, Mark Trenari, Scott Diener, and Mayor Rob Putanzu, as well as staff Nick Bond, Chris Hammer. I'm sorry, John McMillan, I forgot who you are.
I'm John McMillan. I'm a consultant with KPFF Consulting Engineers.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Also, Jody Rademacher and Tyler Vasquez. Tyler, I'm not sure who you're with. Are you with the city? Okay, I didn't hear that.
He's with the KPFF team. Yeah, he's a
great. Okay, and Noah Crocker. I'm sorry, I probably should have let everyone introduce yourselves, but I thought it'd be faster if I just did a roll call. The agenda looks good. So Chris, if you want to start with updates.
Okay. So as far as our projects go, with just a heads up that for the Bethel Phase 1 project, that's the segment of roadway and Blueberry and Salmonberry intersections. We're hoping to come to you still in July with an informational, kind of like we are today with the Bay Street pedestrian pathway. Citywide paving is underway, and hopefully it looks like a number of you have commented on the overlay out over Clifton, so good to see that get done. And then also we're expecting to overlay, we call it Walberry, but it's the Walmart intersection with we have Salmonberry and Blueberry, so we've picked Walberry. But with Bethel and the Walmart intersection there, they're going to pave that intersection on Thursday. Now it's moved up from Friday, which is good. So that'll happen overnight. And then just a quick update on our, this is, I think, Mayor, did you want me to touch on this roof project just in advance of the meeting tonight? Just a quick update, maybe
sure, that'd be a good idea. I forwarded the staff report, and there's an updated version after the attorney's edits, but the dollars haven't changed, so they'll be on the dais for you tonight. But go ahead, Chris.
So we have just a change order coming. We've had another change on the project where we encountered a storm line that was adjacent to the water main, and we can't have other utilities within a certain distance of the water utility, as there could be potential cross-contamination issues in the future, in separate trenches and separated by certain heights and distances. So we've the workaround on that, and that's actually a good thing from a maintenance standpoint, because this was a line that really was kind of dubious for being able to maintain, is we're going to go back to having a ditch or a swale on one side and just kind of and a culvert, rather than having a more extensive distance of pipe. So Tony will be walking on the change order. We want to get authority to do that so we don't interrupt the flow of work on the project. And it's around $28,000 to put in a new catch basin, culvert, and new swale along the roadside. So that's kind of the project updates. We're still working on the pottery and the Bethel Lincoln Roundabout and the Bay Street pedestrian pathway segment 6 to 11. We're hoping to be able to get a number of those projects advertised in the fall of this year, with the exception with the Bay Street pedestrian pathway segments to 11. We're to do the need to update the NEPA. We're looking at the fall of 2024. So we continue to progress on those projects. So does anybody else have anything for updates? If not, I guess
we're ready for the pathway.
Okay. So did Ian make it here?
Chris, Ian called me and told me he had a personal family emergency and couldn't make it today.
Okay.
For a presentation, but he asked if you could give a kind of a city overview quickly of the project, and maybe introduce myself to the staff here. And after that, I can take over the presentation, and Tyler's going to finish up our presentation for our group. So
okay, understood. So what we're doing here is we're studying. We've been focused up to this point on the Bay Street pedestrian pathway, kind of north of the Kitsap Transit ferry dock location in downtown Port Orchard. And so what this study does is we look at everything going to the west from that location, from the transit center, all along the waterfront in front of the community event center, or throughout the community event center, and then down to Port Orchard Boulevard. And then we're also analyzing the context of all the other transportation improvements that are needed along Bay Street, and also the future for Port Orchard Boulevard as far as connectivity for pedestrians and how that ties into our future plans up on Tremont. So that in a nutshell is what we're studying. And I'll turn it over to John to go through his presentation.
Thanks, Chris. Could you enable sharing for me, please?
All right, yeah.
While that's happening, quick question. Is this disassociated with Tremont improvements, or will this include the analysis of those as well?
Well, there's kind of a seam there. So we did receive money to do some design study and design work on Tremont phase 2 and 3 as well. So we're trying our, this particular effort will come first, but we are keeping the end in mind with how these things kind of tick and tie at the top of the hill there at Tremont. All right,
Okay,
was I
thank
able
you.
to share the screen, or has that not been done?
Not working for me.
Okay,
Let's
let's see here.
Chris, would you like me to send you the presentation? Maybe you can, if we can't figure this out, maybe you can run it from your computer.
Let's see. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. I just hit that button. I think that ought to do it.
Okay, here we go. Perfect. Zoom's always tricky to make sure we're sharing the right screen.
All right.
So is everybody able to see a full screen version of the presentation?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. First sign of success. Thanks everybody for coming to the presentation today. My name is John McMillan. I'm a consultant with KBFF Consulting Engineers. I'm happy to be supporting the city on this fun study. We're looking at doing some active transportation investments and some improvements along the waterfront in Port Orchard. In today's meeting agenda, I kind of wanted to run over about 5 points. We're going to introduce the project. Chris did a great job of explaining what we're looking at. We'll talk about our study goals and timelines. We want to present some early treatment and routing options for review and comment. I also wanted to present our proposed public engagement approach to this group to get some feedback, and then go through some next steps and open up to some questions at the end of today. I want to talk about our goals real fast. We are trying to develop a long-term vision for new active transportation facilities for a pathway along Port Orchard's waterfront. We're connecting from to the west from the Foot Ferry Terminal to Port Orchard Boulevard. That's going to be the bulk of our efforts. There's a lot of active redevelopment going along around here, and there's a big desire to improve the active transportation system through here. We're also looking at doing some improvements along Port Orchard Boulevard from Bay Street to Tremont Street. As mentioned, I think those treatments are going to be a little bit less expensive and a little bit less aggressive, but they're still pretty significant. And we also want to build some community support and stakeholder support for future project phases. We really want to have a good vision to move forward with that has council support and has support from the major stakeholders throughout our project. The reason we're doing the study is we've got significant redevelopment within Port Orchard's waterfront. We know there's a couple parallel projects, including some reconstruction along Bay Street. We know there's a lot of adjoining projects that really tie together really well, but there's a lot of work going on at the same time. We also know that there's some bike and pedestrian challenges along the waterfront right now. There's a lot of community support to improve accessibility and have better infrastructure. So also want to look at some important other projects are going along. I'm pretty sure most people are aware that WashDOT's planning a pretty significant project within Bay Street. It's within our study area. They're proposing to remove an existing fish passage barrier along Johnson Creek. There needs to be some coordination between the city and WashDOT on exactly what should be rebuilt for future compatibility. Also want to say that WashDOT and FHWA have funded this study. They've identified this as being a pretty significant project for the area and a good investment for study dollars. Measures of success when we get done with our project include, as I mentioned, having a vision out that's supported for long-term implementation for a great pathway between ferry terminal and Port Orchard Boulevard. We also want to make sure that we're collaborating with WashDOT for any future implementation along Bay Street. There's a lot that goes into these projects between the culvert project, raising up Bay Street, and getting this pathway supported and delivered. Kind of a working schedule for folks. We've been working on this project since about the mid part of March. Picked up survey. Right now, we've completed our first run of concept development, and we've coordinated a little bit with WashDOT already. Going into Q3 of this year, we're proposing to present some alternatives to the public to get some feedback. We want to complete our early evaluations and ultimately have the city select a preferred route for short and long-term implementation. Q4, we're going to be producing a concept design, which is about 10% that can be kind of either put on the shelf or delivered in pieces to move forward. We're going to be submitting a nice study to the city, and hopefully that'll be an adopted plan moving forward. And design and construction is dependent on funding. We envision that most of the pathway will be delivered in pieces in partnership with other stakeholders. Chris gave a really good overview here. So I think I'll just dive into some notes for the rest of the group about exactly some bigger redevelopment pictures. Of course, everybody here is really on top of things about redevelopment, but just for everybody else that may be listening today, we've got the community event center. That's going to be a pretty massive redevelopment project. We've got a bank relocation for Kitsap Bank. They've got a future Bay Street reconstruction project. And as I mentioned, the WashDOT culvert work within this study area. So there's a lot of work. We've been out discussing design collaboration and a lot of grading issues with our project stakeholders and trying to make sure that we're delivering alternatives that are feasible and work really well with the city's long-term vision. We've presented some options to the city. We've gone through some sidewalks and got some different thoughts, and we've kind of identified these potential routes as things we want to evaluate throughout the project. The potential routes that we wanted to evaluate are in red. We know that we would really want to make sure we have good connections from the foot ferry to our future public events center. We know that that project is going forward, and it's definitely going to be an awesome piece along the waterfront. We also know that there needs to be some efforts to connect the bike path along the CEC out further west. We also know that we want to be utilizing the waterfront views and making sure that we have good separation if we can from the roadway to the active transportation facilities.
There's a meeting yesterday with the regional administrator from EPA, and where the boat launch is, the two buildings next to it are going to be demolished, and there's going to be a brownfields grant to clean that up, and the port's not sure. So we'll have an opportunity potentially to go on the water side of that as those are demolished.
Awesome. Are you referring to these two buildings to the west?
Yep.
Launch?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
So there could be another red path along the water.
It's possible. Yeah. We're not sure. We'll have opportunity there for certain. You know, the problem is the next building is out over the water. You know, won't get all the way there, but we should be able to come with a route, at least a pedestrian route anyway.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. I know that
I can imagine boat traffic, launching traffic would be a concern as well.
Yeah, we did walk the site with the Port of Bremerton's representative, and the port expressed a desire not to have bikes and pedestrians walking right in front of the boat launch. Just as a heads up. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't mark it up on here. But,
so the red is showing alternatives, as I understand it.
Yep.
But when I look at what I think might be alternatives, next to the community center are two kind of to the west,
Mhm.
southwest, or two kind of parallel red lines. Those are alternatives, right? One or the other.
Yeah, there's sub options really. So I can show you here in a second if you want to look at
Okay.
it.
I wasn't
Right.
sure that the others were alternatives so much as, for example, along Bay Street, those are going to be developed, the red line there, right? It'll be developed as bike lanes and sidewalks and so on.
Yes, I think we look at a couple different treatment options on Bay Street. We'd be looking at a
Okay.
couple different routing options along the CEC. One option we looked at would potentially have a boardwalk configuration that would help get in the water a little bit. Another option would stick a little closer to shore. As you can imagine, there isn't really a ton of space out there, so some of the options are going to need to be kind of looked at to see what kind of mitigation or environmental issues you'd have about getting within the water itself. I can kind of move forward a little bit here and show.
Hey, another question, Mayor,
Sure.
I was curious when we're talking about the Brownsfield, addressing that, getting a grant for that, is that just on the Port of Bremerton's property or is it also on the adjacent one, the privately owned one?
Well, they bought the two pieces of property.
Okay.
The theater, community theater, and the Kenks sheet metal building are now owned by the port, and they're going to tear the two buildings down and clean up the underground tanks that exist in the contamination.
Okay, all right, that's the location we're talking about.
But they haven't identified a use particularly yet, have they?
Correct.
Okay.
That was brought up yesterday. We don't know. Nick asked the question, that very question.
Thank you.
We did want to say that there may be some interim routes that get phased in. So we are going to be looking at that to make sure that we're considering if a development happens sooner than later. I know that we would definitely like to look at having some sort of connection between the 7-Eleven and the event center. We know that may not be the best long-term place, but it may be a good spot in the short term for getting that bike network connected and built out. We do know that there's definitely limited space between the CEC and the adjacent building and some of the pinch points as you go through the corridor. So we take a look at that. We also know that maybe some opportunity to do a boardwalk shared use path treatment in front of the 7-Eleven building. That would definitely maintain the waterfront views. There are some considerations for in-water work. Structures would be required, but it'd be a pretty awesome treatment. This is kind of a quick sketch up of what that treatment could look like. And here's an example of within our region of some boardwalk style pathways that have been really popular and very successful. So this boardwalk is in Bellingham. That would be kind of a similar structure and width for what potentially could go out along the waterfront along Port Orchard. Also want to talk about, it may end up being a better idea to put something down the Port Orchard Plaza. It's a little bit simpler to route here. We could still get to the CEC, but we may decide it's not the best routing and maybe a little too expensive to go along the waterfront. We're going to be looking at this and making sure that we have a feasible alternative. So it's something we're going to investigate as well. Kind of moving into Bay Street. This is kind of our first thought about what you'd be looking at along Bay Street. Kind of a 12 to 14 foot separated pedestrian pathway, likely on the north side of the road. We want to kind of follow a separation minimum width of 4 feet from the traveled way. This kind of matches the washed out requirements for a shared use path. Kind of transitioning up to Port Orchard Boulevard. This area is probably more likely to be attractive for some lower cost treatments, maybe some restriping. Not as many environmental impacts up here. We thought it was a worthwhile consideration to look at converting one of the uphill lanes into a multimodal facility, improving some active transportation infrastructure. This could potentially be delivered a little bit more quickly. There's a little bit less coordination needs to happen up here, and it seems to be something that's easier to deliver. And a lot of work can get done up here without having too much impact to the existing roadway. This is kind of an example of a typical treatment for a separated and protected bike facility for a two-way shared use path. Another treatment Sure. What's up?
Are there more creative options than Jersey barrier style protections?
Yeah, we're going to come up with 3 options. This is kind of the more expensive option. I think this kind of simulation here looks a little bit more attractive to the area.
Uh-huh.
This facility would be still pretty easy to install, really.
Mhm.
Here you have a nice separated shared use path that's going to be likely on the west side of Port Orchard Boulevard. Our early analysis shows that that's probably the better place to put bike facilities, just due to the existing conditions.
I didn't catch the width on that. I'm sorry.
The required width here, minimum, I think, is 10. I think the desired width is 12 for this
Okay.
facility.
And keep in mind you're adding on a foot on as far as asphalt goes for the shoulders too. So
Yeah, there's going to be some spot paving. This would be a pretty simple treatment that we could come up with a pretty solid design pretty quickly. We are going to come up with one other alternative. I didn't put a visualization together for it, but kind of wanted to throw it out here and get some thoughts about particularly converting the uphill climb lane to something that would be pedestrian focused. And I kind of wanted to.
It's an underutilized roadway. That I see no concerns at all of taking a travel lane out of that roadway, and I sure like the green option here versus the Jersey barrier, as Scott was speaking to also.
Yeah,
I agree.
the Jersey barrier option is more of a washed-out style treatment and is a pretty aggressive treatment. It doesn't seem to fit the context of the road based on our sidewalk and how much traffic's really on there. But I'd like this design myself. I think this will look really nice if it's implemented.
Correct me if I'm wrong. If we build this with local dollars, we don't need to be as concerned with WashDOT standards and versus I know if we pursue state or federal dollars, we have to comply with their, more rigidly.
It kind of varies, to be honest with you. The jurisdiction requirements for Port Orchard Boulevard should be to your standards regardless. So they should be to the local. So WashDOT has their standards, which is the local agency guidelines, which reference certain standards throughout the state, but also allow the cities to adopt their own standards that, as long as they meet the bare minimum state standards. The standards that get applied to Bay Street are going to be different. So they're going to be built to the WashDOT highway standards, and those are more expensive. The treatments are usually more aggressive, and it takes more money, honestly, to deliver that work. Local agency projects are delivered to local agency guidelines, which usually are more flexible and are focused in on agencies that are delivering work that isn't meant to be a highway. So that's a good way
To be honest, by the time we go to build this, Bay Street might be our road.
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier to deliver Bay Street, to be honest with you. And it takes out some headaches for permitting and getting approvals.
I mean, we can hopefully design this or in phases so that we could, if the boulevard's an inexpensive solution or we have various development opportunities, we grab bits and pieces versus doing this all at once, I would hope.
I see retaining walls would be required. Where would retaining walls be required? I'm trying to picture where we're up against slopes.
I think there was only one spot that we thought there may have needed to be one
Okay.
based on our walk. It's not a big retaining wall, but there's one
Okay.
spot where it's a little short, and it was like where the creek was crossing on one side of the road to the other. So
Okay.
Like keep us away from the creek and make it permitting a little easier.
yeah, it definitely will. With the estuary potential reconstruction down by Johnson Creek, that could influence a little bit about our treatment too.
Yeah.
Most people here are probably familiar that Port Orchard and WashDOT are looking to do additional work near the culvert restoration area. So that would potentially influence where our treatments are proposed for the sidewalk. We should use path along Port Orchard Boulevard too. So
All the more reason for this to look more natural versus hardscape.
I agree with you. Are there any other thoughts or questions about potential treatments we've looked at or routing options? I know we've kind of thrown some high level things out here to talk about, but open up to suggestions and talk now if we want to.
I would just throw out that there's kind of the do nothing alternative where we have existing climbing lanes for bicycles on Port Orchard Boulevard. And so it, would pedestrians rather use the adjacent streets than, be walking along here? I don't know. But anyway, we should evaluate that as an alternative as well to putting in a new facility. Not saying that's the right answer, but something to evaluate.
Sure.
I would sure like us to evaluate also, there's some right of way that comes down from well, I don't know whether it's Taylor Street or one of the streets from the county campus, and to tie the pedestrian route that ties into this from the hill above via the existing right of ways we have.
Yeah, that's a good point. That might influence which side that the trail should be located if we have a multi-use trail.
Could be on the other side of the road.
Yeah, I think the west side of the road's going to be ultimately would be better, but you get down towards Bay Street, you're going to run into some challenges down there that you wouldn't have if it ran the east side of the road all the way down.
And then we don't have a crossing. If we tied into the county campus, we don't have a crossing.
Correct.
Right.
So
Yeah, all
Well,
good
you-
observations.
Yeah.
Should also, and I didn't put a slide in here, but mention that there's a proposed single lane roundabout that WashDOT and the city are interested in collaborating on, that will be installed at some point in the not too far distant future, but not in the next 5 years. That's in the city vision at the intersection of Port Orchard Boulevard and Bay Street as well. So it's noted in some of our figures, but we didn't talk about it too much. We have actually talked to WashDOT and presented a couple concepts for collaboration with WashDOT and are continuing that collaboration now. So
Can we go back to the map that shows that roundabout, and maybe the map before that that shows the proposed routes? Because I had a couple thoughts. One is that yes, the connection from Bay Street to Port Orchard Boulevard is a major crossing, and I guess that we're assuming that's going to be addressed by a roundabout, because there are times when, as a car, you cannot even get out into Bay Street at traffic times. So this would be, we'd have to make a pedestrian crossing there of some sort. And I also was really concerned about the sharp 90-degree turn around the Port Orchard, the event center, for the proposed bike path, because that is not only is that such a hard right turn, traditionally there is a pedestrian trail, or whatever you'd call it, along the water to the boat launch, where pedestrians will probably continue to walk. So when I see the 90-degree angle, I'm thinking, I don't know that pedestrians will use it. I'm not sure that bikes would use it either. Most bikes may actually just prefer Bay Street from the foot ferry if it's faster. So those are just some of my.
yeah, that's true. The bicycles on the Bay Street. Remember, when we tear the Banks building back, we're stepping back 50 feet, and that's all getting rebuilt. So those curves, those angles are going to be different than they are
True.
today.
That's true. Yeah.
All right, so I guess our next step is we're going to go out and do some public outreach. And then at some point, we're going to come back to a council study session. Remind me, John, were we thinking we'd do that after the August recess or before that or what was our schedule on that?
well, I think it depends. I kind of want to get some feedback from council to see how they feel about our options. I also would like Tyler to walk through our public outreach engagement plan. We have some slides to talk about that now.
Yeah,
And
we
then,
get feedback on that as well as the material that's been presented thus far.
So
Thanks.
one thing I wanted to add is I love the idea of an overwater structure. But the maintenance obligation for that should be considered when we look at something like that.
Yeah.
So I would ask that we evaluate that.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay. Tyler, can you give a quick presentation?
Yeah.
is muted.
Tyler, you're muted.
Well, now he shows muted. It looks like we're having maybe volume issues on your end, Tyler.
Can you hear me?
You're
Yep.
back. Good.
Great. Sorry, I'm as you can tell, I'm having a little bit technical difficulties. But part of the reason why I'm here today is to share and receive buy-off on our tentative outreach schedule, and also give you an overview of our public engagement process, which we plan to kick off later this summer. Some of the project team, as we were seeing earlier, is kind of developing the alternatives for the Bay Street Trail study. And over the next month, we feel that they're going to be refining, taking the feedback you all, and then we want to be able to work to develop public-facing material. Some of the goals that we have for our engagement is to understand existing conditions and challenges in the study area, including traffic congestion, safety concerns, and mobility issues. Identify the needs of the residents, businesses, and other stakeholders in the area. Establish an understanding of the goals, outcomes among the community, and involve the community at key points in the decision-making process. And also reflect the community's vision and feedback into the study. Next slide. So some of the stakeholders that we want to engage is, as you see, you all receiving your feedback, and then in addition to that, local residents, property owners, businesses, and then we want to work and talk to community groups and local tribes and Port of Bremerton, and among other government agencies. Next slide. So what we'll be talking about with the community is the kind of what we want the community to weigh in is the connectivity. So as you were outlining, connections to the to and from Bay Street, the intersection treatments, and then interest in use. And then one of the things that we're exploring is a mapping tool that we want to be able to develop that would allow us to understand what the community's needs are and the concerns along the route and in the broader project here. So next slide. And so this is what our engagement process looks like. Currently in June, we're vetting the engagement process with you all, with John, things like that. And we're developing materials. In July, we want to launch our engagement. And then with that launch is going to become a project website, stakeholder interview, business outreach, things that accord. In August, we're going to be running and continuing that engagement process and then wrapping that up. And in September, we're going to be summarizing and integrating all of the input that we have received from the public into design. So that's our kind of engagement process that we're looking at launching really soon this round.
Thanks, Tyler. So we wanted to kind of move into what are our next steps. We wanted to confirm with the council that the potential routing concepts and treatments seem feasible and are of interest to the council to move forward with to start some engagement. I think we did a pretty good job of walking through a couple different options. So got some good stuff here. We can come up with a few more options. Definitely appreciate that. We also wanted to get buy-off on our engagement methods and goals seem to align with the city vision. We just want to get confirmation that we can go ahead and start talking to the public about this project and where we want to head. So I want to throw it out there. I know that we can come back in a month to show you a little bit more of our materials that we take out to the public, but I'm pretty confident that we can come up with a pretty good engagement process and get it rolling by basically in 2 or 3 weeks, kind of like Tyler said. So I wanted to throw it out there to see how everybody's feeling about this project and kind of getting a feel for the room. So And of course, I'll let Chris speak as well.
Yeah, so we're coming to this committee as using this the transportation committee as our steering committee. So just throwing that out there. And I don't know if it makes sense to come to council at the study session like in a July or just, and I don't even remember if we had, I think we had that on a reservation for that if we need it, or just wait till we do more public engagement and then bring these things back. I mean, I guess that depends on how comfortable all of you are with the kind of the routing concepts we have and some of the treatments and things as far as putting that out to the public without engaging the full council.
I don't think we need to take this. This is pretty benign. I think we can go get some public input and to confirm or deny our beliefs and then circle back to the full count. Next time, take it to the full council.
Okay.
You give a little more detail on the engagement methods. I mean, all I heard was a website, but what else is there going to be?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing stakeholder interviews. In addition to that, we're going to be doing business outreach, flyers, mailers, and also we're going to present a survey. Our team's working on being able to conceptualize what that survey will look like. One of the things we're thinking about is maybe possibly presenting some alternatives, being able to see where the community does want the trail, where the connectivity wants, things like that is what we're going to be working on in July and August.
And how would the mapping tool support all that?
So we're looking at, there's a mapping tool that we've used in the past that you can overlay the maps, so to speak, or the alternatives. Say you have different connection pieces, such as that the different alternatives. One has a 90-degree turn, one is more Bay Street forward. We could be able to overlay those alternatives on top of each other, and then the community could see what they prefer, like visually on the by the options and alternatives. So that's what we're investigating right now to be able to bring to the community, is to take a vote on it.
Do you know how many residents you're doing direct mail to? Do you have a number or anything like that?
We don't have that. We're in the developing phase right now. We could get that number and get it back to you all.
Well, the reason I'm asking, I'm wondering about the scope of the outreach. I mean, you're going to want to tell people to take the survey, but how are you going to tell them about it? I mean, are you sending every city resident a postcard? Is that the plan, or is there another way to get the word out?
Oh, we're currently working on that specific plan. Is kind of looking at what is the specific question that the project team needs to get answered and to receive the feedback, and then we're looking at being able to see where should we spend our time talking to the businesses, then also should we spend our time talking to the property owners, the areas that mostly may be affected, or the larger broader audience. We're currently developing that kind of specific plan right now.
Yeah, what we're trying to avoid is like having a public meeting on the project and having, you know, the staff and consultants outnumber the people that show up. So we think there's other things we could do to try to get people engaged in the project and give them, you know, ways to, you know, better get the information from them in ways that are easily digestible and where they can provide comments back that, you know, that are geo-referenced and maybe more useful on some of the ideas that the team is throwing out to them.
That sounds good. I'm just concerned that it's summer and it'll be hard to get people's attention unless you really hit them like with the mail piece or whatever it is you're trying to do.
It's a good concern. I think one of the things that we would try to implement is to have a QR code and some flyers that people could walk by and just if they see the QR code, they could hit it with their phone and do the survey as they're walking by. And that could even be forwarded out and on the project website. Are there any particular people that you feel that need to be consulted for this project? That are of keynote that we haven't identified yet?
I would just mention, we had a presentation from a cycling group at this committee about a year ago. And they came to Port Orchard expressing how important it was to have sort of a seamless bike experience and not having to get off your bike or you know, get through an area. And they were talking about how our waterfront pathway, our current pathway, has some obstacles and is not necessarily easy because of various obstructions, including vehicles that park and hang over the pathway and things of that nature. So Chris, I don't know if you remember when
Was that the West Sound Cycling Club?
something like that. Yeah.
And the other thing that they're out there is that actually Kitsap County has a non-motorized transportation work group, and they're, you know, they concern themselves north, central, and south, but we might want to just throw it out to them and get their feedback. And they, you know, they're linked in with a lot of the cycling groups and different groups. So I'll try to follow up with that information for you, John.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. Do you have any recommendations of how to get more outreach or engagement with this community? We'd be more than happy to hear any suggestions.
How about for like the downtown businesses?
We've got the Merchants Association, we have the Chamber of Commerce. Those are musts. We've got our Facebook page, which has a lot of followers. And then, you know, our website. Those are four places I would start.
All right, appreciate the ideas.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, I guess we'll go forth and do well and launch into the public outreach component. Think about what we've heard today. Make sure that we're being as comprehensive and targeted in our effort as we can be.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So I guess we're ready for the golf cart ordinance.
Chris, is this me or are you going to speak to this one?
This is DCD.
All right. So as everyone is aware, we've been seeing a lot of new subdivisions and final plats in the McCormick West area. And previously, I think 5 or 8 years ago, we designated a golf cart zone in McCormick Woods. And we have to post signs at either end of McCormick Woods informing people that they're entering an area where golf carts are on the road. And now we have new streets that have stubbed into McCormick Woods that don't have signage. And the question arose, do we want to expand the golf cart zone into McCormick West, or do we want to post signs where McCormick West meets McCormick Woods? In speaking with the McCormick Land Company, they indicated that their preference would be to include McCormick West in the golf cart zone. So Josie, who's here tonight, has prepared a map. I don't know if I don't have it handy. Is somebody able to pull that up and share it? And anyway, the proposal would just be to bring forward a simple ordinance to amend our existing golf cart zone map that is on file with the city. And so it's a simple ordinance that would have to be passed, and we could take it forward rather quickly if the committee is supportive.
And some new signs, because we've got other entrances we'd have to post. But I mean, it is so popular out there. I don't know why we wouldn't do this. I mean, people not just golfing, but running around in the community out there in their electric golf carts to the restaurant. You know, someday, hopefully we have some roundabouts and along Old Clifton and the speed limit's slower so you can get to the village, but that's just not viable until with a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yeah, so this map includes all of the future phases of McCormick West. It's south of Old Clifton, so you can't take a golf cart onto Old Clifton Road. It also includes the future phases of McCormick Woods which are a little south and east of where the current development is located in Woods. So I think this map probably makes good sense. If and when the property next to the Christ the Rock Church, just east of that, comes in for some sort of entitlement, we may or may not want to include that depending on what type of development that is. But for now, I think it's safe to include it. Any questions?
No, I'd support increasing the size of the golf cart area in McCormick Woods.
I don't have a problem with it either. Have there been any accidents involving golf carts? No.
I guess my only question is, should we consider consulting with the HOA and see if they have an opinion? I can't imagine that it would be different from the McCormick Land Company, but I don't know.
I've heard nothing but positive things about this.
Okay.
Yeah, the only question I had about this is that I appreciate that it's, we're not having golf carts on Old Clifton Road. That's a pretty high volume road. But right
Yeah.
now, as you exit towards, what is it, Glenwood, that's to the south there on McCormick Woods Drive. Maybe that segment, that windy segment that we see that is partially within the boundary and partially outside of the boundary, that right there, maybe that section of street should be free of golf carts.
So that area has new roads coming off of it as part of the McCormick entitlement. So there are 2 subdivisions on either side of that still have to be constructed. So we could temporarily exclude that, but I think we'd be amending the map again in the future.
I don't see anybody driving out there.
Yeah, I
It'd be
guess
convenient
the
to
carts won't
include
drive
right
out
now.
there unless there's a golf course out there. So
Yeah, I don't think it'll get utilized until those roads are built, because there's no reason for anybody to drive a golf cart out there. There's no services, there's no homes out there. But as Nick is pointing out, when those subdivisions get platted and built, prevents us from having to take this up again, because it'll just happen.
Nick, is there any projected timeline on those subdivisions being built?
Yeah, actually, McCormick Communities has submitted some plat amendments for this area to do some minor adjustments to configuration. So that is under review right now. I think I can't remember which one of these they said they want to go first, but they do want to start the next phase in McCormick Woods, because golf course lots are a different sort of a different product than what they're building in McCormick West. And so they want to have some of their higher end product available in McCormick Woods to go along with kind of the mid to high end product in McCormick West and the middle product in McCormick Village.
So do you think 5 years or less, or more than 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's less than 5 years. I think they'll be breaking ground. I think they have to build a lift station out there to serve that whole area. And one of those sites in particular is where the lift station is going to be. And I believe that's the one that will go first.
I've got a little bit of concern with having it open for golf carts out there, because if I'm not mistaken, that road ends up at Glenwood and the fire station.
But you couldn't drive that far on it.
I agree with the mayor. I don't, a normal person wouldn't drive a golf cart out there. So I wouldn't have any problem passing it, fully to the full extent at this point, or quite frankly, amending it 5 years or so down the road. I'm good either way on that.
I'm good either way.
Me as well, or I as well. Either way.
I would suggest let's defer to our city engineer, and Chris, let's look at the plat amendment plans together so you can see where these entrances are, and if we need to make some minor tweaks to the map to plan for that future development, let's possibly make some minor adjustments.
okay, or keep it simple.
Okay, is there anything else on golf carts? If not, let's talk about Sydney Avenue, Tremont to Lippert.
Okay, so the city received a petition that was signed by, oh gosh, it looks like a dozen or so residents. It's out on the 1700 block of Sydney Avenue. Requesting solutions, the unsafe conditions in our neighborhood streets located at this location is a high pedestrian traffic, 3 school bus stops, 2 Kitsap transit stops, large apartments, Vanzy Park, several people who walk along the block are disabled, including a blind woman, and most daily. Speeding is the biggest concern. There have been at least 3 incidents in the last year where fences, mailbox, utility poles, waste cans have been destroyed. Pedestrians could have been injured or killed in these cases. The street is narrow, has no sidewalks, no crosswalks, no shoulder on each side. Residents have complained and reported a speed situation for years. So this is kind of out where we just did our Lippert project, where we extended the sidewalks on in Sydney Avenue and then down to Tremont, as I believe, and then probably also going back to the south to some extent. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure where the 1700 block is. I probably should look at that before the meeting here. But
It's just near Poplar, near the park.
okay, Sir Vanzy.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to this committee's attention. I know these issues, we've discussed them in the past as they've come up, and want to make you aware that we'd received this petition. What else did I have on this? So a couple ideas. One thing that we noticed is that we're looking to lower the speed limit. We just did the study when we do the Pottery improvements, that we'd lower the speed limit on Pottery to 25. Also, currently Lippert is 25, and this section of Sydney is posted at 30. So it seems, if we want to. And it's basically the same kind of collector system that goes through Lippert and on down Sydney Avenue here that tie into Tremont. So it seems like lowering the speed limit is something that would be reasonable to look at. And so then the question is, do we wait and gather more of these type of things, or do we just go ahead and launch into doing another study? We do have the budget to do it if we choose to do that, or maybe we want to evaluate this with other things we've been hearing more recently and looking at doing another speed study. Another idea would be, another good thing to note is that there is a Windward Estates is a development that's going in, and they'll extend the sidewalk at least on one side further to the north from where the Lippert project took off up along their frontage. So that will complete some sidewalk on the west side of the street. But then as you approach Vanzy Park, we have a section of the roadway where there's a number of fences that are within the right of way that are encroaching on the right of way and very minimal shoulder. And so one kind of low cost idea we had that we could evaluate would be going in and pulling it, working with relocating those fences and putting a shoulder in. Kind of the minimum safe facility would be an 8-foot gravel shoulder for people to walk on down to the park. That's kind of the easier side of the roadway to work with. The ditch is on the uphill side or the other hill side of the road. So that's just another idea that I'm throwing out there.
Chris, when you talk about a speed study, would that be on Sydney from Tremont to Lippert, or what segments are you proposing?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. We could look at other sections on Sydney as well. I forget if it's probably, I think it's 30 even south of there. So if we lower the speed limit there, we'd probably want to look at that more comprehensively. Yeah,
I've heard complaints about Sydney for a long time, but especially south of Lippert as well. It seems to get a little rougher. I guess maybe down to Fireweed, but we know that, we've been aware that it's been bad and it's been in need of
Yeah, I mean, the road and the speed are 2 different issues. I think it's a waste of money to spend it on do a speed study. Let's just lower the speed limit. If we wanted to raise the speed limit, I would have safety. We need to evaluate safety concerns, you know,
So the reason we do that is
lower the speed
our
limit.
code indicates that we have to do that, and not only,
Change-
and in and
change the
above what the
code.
RCW requires, which is for collector and arterial streets, but also for local access streets. So we got a couple options. Speaking to that, in the future, we could amend our code to just match what the requirements are in the RCWs. Therefore, on local access streets, we could lower the speed limit if we did, you know, administratively. That might be a good thing going forward. But in this case, I think just due to the fact that part of it's a collector street, state law requires that we do the speed study if we were to modify the speed limit.
You're serious?
So,
We have to do a speed study to drop it 5 miles an hour from 30 to 25 miles an hour, according to the state?
Yep.
Wow.
Well, it could provide cover because some people are not going to like lowering that because I've heard from people who want it to be 30 so they can get to work. So you do
Fast
hear
way to
both
get around, you
sides.
know, avoid the roundabout and just do the cut through.
Oh, a roundabout at
So-
Lippert and Sydney. Well, there's
Oh.
a stop sign there, which is nice.
Pottery to Tremont would be it's kind of a little cut through from there. You're cutting south on Pottery.
Can you lower the speed limit on an interim basis while you conduct a study?
It doesn't go into that detail. I don't know if we,
Yeah, that's a city attorney question.
So I would prefer to look at the kinds of improvements that the neighborhood would like based on needs and stats that are showing maybe other areas in the city that have had more accidents. I can appreciate that they put a petition together, but if there are other areas that are more needy because of more accidents, more conflicts, I think we should consider those areas first. So that's my take on it.
and
Did we see this letter?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Petition.
I think it's, other than the silly speed study, lowering the speed limit is a good first step. I agree with
Yeah.
Scott that we have a transportation plan and, you know, there's development happening out there driving some of this. I think we've got some encroachments along the shoulder that we would need to deal with or get people to remove fences and hedges and things. You know, long-term solutions.
Yeah.
But I agree with Scott that, yeah, there's a concern here, but is this the most dangerous section of roadway in the city?
Actually, do we have that ranking? Because Scott, there are a lot of apartments there. There's a lot of traffic on that segment of Sydney.
But
Actually,
often
almost
our
all of our
improvements
apartments are on Lippert and Sydney.
often our improvements are based on accident rates, right?
So let me just add some context. So we do have a local agency safety plan, and part of that plan is that we've, that's how we ended up getting the funding for Bethel, 5A at Lincoln and Lund. So that was our highest priority project that was identified in the study. There's some other ones. Most of the ones that have accident history are located on our busier streets, on the Bethels and those kinds of streets. We do so, but then the other point for context is that this is a relatively small amount of money we're talking about here too, and we have a history of going through, like we did on McCormick Woods, where the community complained. We received some information from the community that they're concerned, and then we evaluate the concerns on kind of a case-by-case basis. And if there are things that are relatively inexpensive, then the analysis bears it out that there are things that are reasonable to do, then we try to step up and address those.
well, and the grant that we received from WashDOT for Tremont 2 and 3 is going to cover these pedestrian improvements in that study, correct?
Yeah, so we're doing kind of the same thing we're doing for connectivity, trying to understand the connectivity issues with the Bay Street pedestrian pathway west. That study one of the requirements for that study is and the reason it's driven is it's a safety driven thing. It's a safety for pedestrian safety. So we're trying to evaluate the Tremont corridor and figure out, where's the need for a safe crossing the greatest? Is it at Tremont? Is it at Sydney? And what drives a potential future safe pedestrian connectivity and safety project along that corridor? and as part of that, we want to evaluate all of, Sydney to Lippert, and then also Sydney down to Melcher. And we want to engage the public and try to figure out where people are going, or they, and how best, where the desire lines are, and how best to provide for that improvement that will be used by the public.
Okay.
So this proposed short-term solution where the sidewalk ends and putting in the wider shoulder would be a nice interim step to another project that may happen later. Maybe we can, and it might make it easier in the future if we've already dealt with the right-of-way aspect of that, to extend that project a little further and complete the sidewalk, this section of sidewalk down to that intersection. I'm hopeful that we can get funding for that Tremont and Sydney roundabout project in the future.
So Chris, you're talking about on the west side of Sydney from Lippert down to the Tremont intersection, is that correct? Of creating a kind of a pull-out area that will have pedestrian walking capabilities, is that correct?
Yeah, just an 8-foot gravel shoulder would be, where the sidewalk will end after that development goes in, would be provide connectivity down to the intersection. Currently, there's really no place to walk along the roadway that's safe for people.
Right. Yeah, it's very difficult to walk along there, but it's also, I mean, and I'm not poo-pooing that idea at all. I think that's a wonderful idea, but it's also a fairly steep drop off there as you head down towards where you have a water tower, not a tower, but a water reservoir there, and then from there down to Tremont, it's a fairly steep drop off down into the park. That would be a challenge, but I think it's a challenge we should look at personally.
Yeah, I get that. And just with this end at the park, and then you go through the park because it's too steep along the roadway, or, how would that all work? Is, I guess we haven't gotten that far down the line with this, but.
Well, I think to address this concern, it's really just from the Atlas Apartments down to Tremont for the time being.
Agreed.
And the other problem with that is if we do that, we can do some of that work in-house and perform that work, pulling the shoulders and providing a gravel shoulder. But the problematic piece of it is there's going to be some code enforcement action with some fences or hedges that are actually in the wider right-of-way that are pre-existing.
Well, yeah, that's the price you pay for developing within the right of way and then asking for safety improvements.
Right.
Yeah, but that raises a good point, Tony, is like how I mean, how much support do we have for doing something that will definitely impact, I think, 3 neighbors that have fences along there for the greater good. Is that, and then again, maybe gets back to your question, Scott, about how much of a priority this is for the city. So we want to kind of weigh all those things. I'm looking to kind of have this discussion with this committee for that reason.
And sorry, Scott, after we received this, we did take the portable radar signs just for the interim and put them out there for a week or two, just to, hopefully we could get some traffic calming based on that, but how well that works over the long term.
And
well, but it showed a very quick response. And Tony, I want to thank you for that too, because I drove up that road shortly after we got that letter, and seeing those up there and noticing there was a traffic change there. There was a slowdown going on there. So, just as an interim proposal, could we put those things out there? I understand, like any sign, they're going to be forgotten 2 weeks later if they're there that long, but can we rotate those things in and out of that area on a periodic basis to help show the residents that we are working on a plan, and here's a temporary solution or something we're trying to do to help slow the traffic down there while we move on something forward?
Yeah, definitely. We can sort of set up a schedule between, the places that we've had recommendations, which would be Merrimack, St. Andrews, out in McCormick Woods, and we can just sort of, if we're not having to utilize them for a specific project, we definitely can get them out in the community and put them in specific places.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Band-Aid.
It is.
So, okay, so I'd be happy to do a task to do a speed study evaluation now, or we could wait a few more months and see whatever, whatever we shake the, the tree a little bit more and see what falls out and try to batch a few more together. It just depends on how urgent the committee looks at this particular situation, I guess.
Well, we also owe the petitioners a response.
Mhm.
So I think that should be pretty calculated as well.
Including, I responded to Mr. Hubble already.
Okay. But no response has gone out with what we plan on doing at this point.
Correct. Yeah, we're waiting to meet with you guys first.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Chris, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the response needs to include that there are improvements in the right of way that'll have to be moved. And often that can temper people's enthusiasm. So.
Okay.
I think that's a great way to go at it, Scott. I like that. There are going to be some homeowners that are going to have to move some things if we go down this pathway, no pun intended, to create a better walking experience for people down that road. Chris, I'm pretty new to this. What's traffic steady cost? You say it's minimal. What's minimal to you may not be minimal to me. What are you thinking of there? What do you
I guess.
And can I add, can we do that in-house, and how formal does this study need to be?
So the nice thing that the consultants have is they're able to use get data that I don't have access to. Basically, it's generated by people's cell phones as they're turned on and they drive around, and talks about, gives the counts and speeds and that kind of stuff. I'm trying to remember how much the last one we did was, Tony. It was a few $1,000s, but we have
It was like 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah, we have money budgeted for this on-call consultant for public works. So when I say minimal amount of money, we have an on-call consultant that we could just task them to do this, and we have a budget for it.
Yeah, we have the equipment in-house to do a traffic study for the counts, but we can't do a speed study. We don't know how fast they're going.
In terms of our response and improvements that would have to be removed, fences, I think it's also important to mention that those do not get reinstalled at the city's expense, because I think quite often that's the next question is, okay, you're moving my fence, but are you going to put it back up?
Actually, we're not moving their fence. We're telling them to move their fence.
Yeah, sorry. With in that scenario, we don't reinstall fences or replant hedges.
Right. Yeah, it would start with a code enforcement action to move their assets.
I think it's good to put that context maybe into a response that, yes, we're looking into it, and it may involve moving of fences. And now that you bring up the address of the 1700 block and the name Hubble, I seem to recall that at one time around that location is where they wanted to put one of the little pantries, but they were told by someone that they had to remove it because there was not, I don't know, it was either in the right of way or it was not a safe place. And I remember thinking that that block of Sydney was not the best location, because if you have someone driving by to a pantry, there's no place for people to park on Sydney, at least on that block. It's very difficult. I mean, it's already hard to walk, as we've established. It's even harder to park. I'm sure, Scott, that you remember doorbelling. It's like part of it is you're figuring like, where do you park and where do you walk to just meet people at their houses without parking in their driveways. So it's an awkward, it's a tight, it's not quite, it's a very constricted roadway to begin with. And they've got to know that, yes, their fences have been in the right of way, and that's needed for safety.
All right. So it doesn't sound like there's a lot of heartburn from this committee about taking that approach, and other than just, we respond back that we could look into this and then get further feedback from the community. But we can at least throw it out there. And then as far as the speed study goes, I mean, we could just tell them if this sometime, and when we do our next speed evaluation within the city, we'll consider this location. Yes. And then there's no particular hurry to do it, but we commit to doing a speed study and reevaluating the speed limit the next time we do that. Does that sit well with everybody?
That sounds good. And I bet we have a speed study on file. I don't know how recent it would have been because that's a well-trafficked segment.
We probably have some intersection counts and some data for the segment.
Well, you've got a new complex going on up there. Is that what you were mentioning on the west side, up past the apartment complex? You know, it'd be a waste of money and effort to do a speed study before that place gets built and put into place. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to do a speed study on this and perhaps looking at reducing the speed limit, but to do it now and have this new place being built over the next 12 months seems like a waste of energy and time and money.
Nick, where's the new place being built? Is it on Sydney?
Are we talking about the subdivision there, Chris?
Apartment.
The what's it?
Windward
Windward
Estates, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, where is that?
It's on the west side of Sydney. It's 2 or 3 lots north of Lippard.
Across from Bothwell? I'm just trying to look at the map and get an idea. Okay. So,
Across from my street, where my street hits Sydney, yeah,
oh, you're on Bothwell?
I am.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. I know where you live now.
Damn it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a nice green open space there. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Okay, and while we're on the subject of complaints around speeding, I had a call from a nice lady who lives on West Avenue, and West Avenue is kind of a cut through that's also off of Sydney. I guess there's a little like 7-Eleven or something on West. And
Forest
then-
Park?
and then people can cut down to Melcher through there, and I guess we've had some speeders. I think the speed limit's already appropriate, but I thought that was maybe another place we could put out those little feedback signs and get some data at some point. But just want to let you know we received a complaint in there about excessive speeding. As people,
Oh yeah, west is a very long segment between Melcher and South,
correct.
so it would be a prime speeding potentials.
I get complaints everywhere in the city about speeding.
Well, especially the long blocks. Yeah.
Anyway, they're requesting speed humps or bumps, and so I said we
They
have
should pour out gravel or something.
Where were you talking about?
that information was shared with Public Works as far as locating the feedback signs, and also the police department as far as any enforcement patrols or patrols that they would have in the area, just to be aware of.
That was my concern with doing the McCormick speed bumps, is we're going to get asked to put them everywhere in the city, and they're going to be a problem for emergency vehicles and public works for maintenance. So we've opened Pandora's box.
Well, if it makes people feel safer, I think that's a plus.
Are you safer if the emergency vehicle can't get to you in a timely manner?
Well, I live on a street that people go too fast on anyway. So kind of get used to it.
Everywhere.
I think we all live on streets people go too fast on these days.
And of course, we would evaluate all the installations and look at the cumulative effects, and we don't want people dying of heart attacks because ambulance can't get them fast enough, and that's more likely to happen than somebody getting.
How much does it slow them down? 2 seconds or what? It's like,
Well, the thing is they're
If a patient riding in the back of an ambulance and you threw them up in the air.
hey, they're already in distress. I'm sorry.
Fire vehicles carry water, so they have to really crawl across those things. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll remind you of a time check because we've got another meeting coming up quickly.
Yes. So I think are there any further thoughts on the Sydney discussion, or any future items that anyone wants to bring up, or for future? I don't. Any other items for the go to the order before we conclude? No. Okay, thank you. I move to adjourn.
All right, we'll see you guys shortly.
Thanks, everyone.
See you in a little bit.